You might remember from a long time ago a promise I made to show you how to reference, research, and source material properly, and how to avoid plagiarism while you do so. It's about time I lived up to that promise. Here's a short video lesson that will show you how to do just that. It will be particularly useful for those of you moving on to university in the fall, as you'll spend a lot of time using these skills in a variety of different undergrad programs. We often need to reference sources when we write critically. When we write an analytical essay on the glass castle, for example, we'll need to refer to, summarize, paraphrase, and even quote the text itself. This is the type of referencing that you're probably most used to, as you've been doing it for at least a few years now. However, those same referencing skills can be used in other ways too. How many of you have ever been stuck during the writing process and have reached out to use sources like Wikipedia, SparkNotes, CliffNotes, Shmoop, LitCharts, Goodreads, or something similar to help you generate ideas? Guess what? This doesn't have to be a dirty little secret that you keep to yourself. You are allowed to use these sources as long as you keep two big things in mind. You need to show what you've borrowed, and you need to synthesize that with your own ideas. Students use these sources in their writing in a variety of ways, but not always correctly. For example, let's look at a fake assignment 3 students had to write on the Venus flytrap plant. All 3 students conducted research and found the same helpful article by Samantha Buglover to help them write their paper. Henrietta simply became unstuck after reading the article and was able to tap into things she already knew about the Venus flytrap. Eugene chose to reassemble these ideas in these articles into his own writing. Tabitha decided to copy and paste portions of the article, change a few words here and there, and try to pass it off as her own. Most of us would hopefully agree that Tabitha, the 3rd student, has violated academic integrity and plagiarized her work. Copying and pasting without giving credit is an obvious no-no. However, this is where things get tricky. Eugene has also committed plagiarism if he hasn't referenced the ideas that he's borrowed appropriately. If someone else's ideas have become the basis for his work, he needs to be upfront about what he got from where and what he's done to integrate his source material with his own ideas to avoid plagiarism. Henrietta probably hasn't done anything wrong, so she's in the clear. Good job, Henrietta. Let's dig into Eugene's work and look at what he needs to do to avoid plagiarism and the different ways he can integrate his source material with his own ideas. There are basically 3 different ways that he can utilize the source material. He can summarize, paraphrase, or quote the material he's consulted. When we summarize a source, we take the main ideas or central points that the source covers, put them into our own words, and then acknowledge the original author. We consider the passage as a whole, or at least large sections of it, and we repackage them in order to condense and streamline them. When we paraphrase a source, we take a specific point, argument, example, or portion of a text, rephrase it in our own words, and then acknowledge the original author. We select the portion of the text that is most useful or relevant for the argument that we're making, and then use the author's work to back up our own argument. When we quote a source, we use the exact words from the source and indicate the direct usage of the author's ideas with quotation marks. We may need to delete words when we use an ellipsis, or we may need to add or edit others using square brackets in order to fit the source's syntax with our own. The key, no matter whether you're summarizing, paraphrasing, or quoting, is to indicate where specifically you have borrowed from and utilized source material, and what ideas are your own. Let's take a look at some of Eugene's writing and see what's been plagiarized and what hasn't. In this excerpt from Eugene's essay on the Venus flytrap, he is copied directly from Samantha Buglover's article. He hasn't provided any reference to Buglover's work, and he hasn't indicated Buglover's words with quotation marks. He's copied and pasted without referencing. Bad Eugene. However, in his edited work here, Eugene has now reframed Buglover's ideas into his own words, and he's given credit to the original author. The choice to paraphrase the work is just fine, but it's really the reference to Buglover that is key here. Well done, Eugene. Here, You'll notice that Eugene has reframed a portion of Bug Lover's article entirely in his own words. There's no quotation marks, but that's fine because he's paraphrasing the article, right? Oh, Eugene. This is still plagiarism. If Eugene is going to use Bug Lover's ideas, he needs to give credit. If he paraphrases Bug Lover's article, he needs a phrase like, according to Bug Lover, or an in-text citation to show where he's borrowed these ideas from. Hopefully, you can see that Eugene doesn't need to completely overhaul his work. To avoid plagiarism, it's simply a matter of adding citations and phrases that show where his own ideas end and where the source references begin. But that might bring up a question. How much referencing can I get away with? Is it fine to include a reference in every single sentence, as long as I include appropriate references and citation? Technically, that would not be plagiarism. However, how much actual thought and engagement does that take? If you do that, what have you actually done to show the reader that you've carefully thought about the topic and text, engaged with it, and provided an insightful take on it? This is where we need to think about how to synthesize ideas, how to take the source material you've consulted and reflect on it, extend it, develop it, critique it, or take it somehow in your own direction. Think of source material or references like salt. You should use it. When sprinkled in and used deliberately, source material enhances the ideas you've presented in your work. It can be a complement to what you have to say quite nicely. However, too much salt can be a problem. When there's too much source material and not enough of your own ideas, it's like taking a spoonful that's more salt than soup. If there's not enough original thought and only references to things other people have said, it leaves a bad taste in your reader's mouth. The key to remember here, folks, is that anytime you borrow an idea from a source you've consulted, you need to be direct and upfront about where you got it from. It's perfectly fine to conduct research for critical writing. In fact, I recommend it. However, you need to show what's your work and what's not, and give credit where credit is due. Then, once you've shown what you've borrowed, you need to do something with it. Take it a step further and synthesize it. Contribute to the conversation and advance it, rather than just saying, yeah, what he said. I'm hoping that's cleared up some of the murkiness around plagiarism, folks. Take the time to practice these skills. I promise that will make you a stronger, more confident writer, and will help you get unstuck when you hit roadblocks in planning.